Today we'll be covering, I guess, getting ready for the holiday season. So as you can see up there on the screen, we're going to add a quick way to sort of add holiday stuff. So checking your licenses, just requesting additional licenses with ClockOn if you need to, how to add people a nice quick way using the duplicate function, how to add your public holidays for the up and coming year moving forward. Also how to apply those public holidays into the rosters and some other additional rostering shifts as well. There's a couple of states with split or part public holidays for Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. So I'll show you how we handle those at the moment. Also, if you're doing any Christmas bonuses or needing to apply any bonuses or allowances, I'll show you how to quickly add those and apply them in bulk. And then also processing payrolls in advance, how we can do that. And then just give you some ideas on some remote access options. All right, so we will get in there now and I'll make sure that I am recording the session. So we do record all of the sessions in the system. I will just also put up in the link, sorry, how to call in. It looks like there's a couple of people without microphones in there. So there's a phone number there, join by phone audio if you don't have computer audio, and just enter the meeting ID and you'll jump in with the phone call on that session. All right, fantastic. So when we get into adding the employees and the license count, quick way to check that to see where your licensing is. So down the bottom right-hand corner, we've got how many people are registered. And then up the top here under the reports, I've added it to my favorite reports, but it is one of the general reports. So you can use this drop-down menu here to get to your general reports. And we've got a license count report. So if we just double click on that report, click on preview, it's looking for all of the location ranges here on this. And if you quickly just jump to the last page, it's got here how many licenses you're using and how many accounts that you've registered. So you can see if you're going to be increasing some holiday stuff over the time, how many you're potentially going to need to increase. So you can increase at any time throughout the year. Just email support@clockon.com.au with a list of how many licenses you would like to increase it to, and just say I'm okay to add this to my monthly subscription. Any annual people will be adjusted accordingly on that one. We do have 4 reductions every year that you can reduce your amount. So in saying that, so if you have a big influx over the holiday season and then afterwards you want to reduce it for the rest of the year, that's fine as well. Let us know. We can make those adjustments for you on that one. So before we start setting up the holiday rosters and adding employees, what we want to do in there is, if you've got new adding them in, one thing that sort of can catch people out is the super funds. So to quickly add a super fund, you want to do that before you go into the employee details and add everything. So to do that, if we go to the system setup in here, under the super tab, we've got a list of all of our super funds here. So in the drop down, we've got everything that's in there. If anything that's not in this list and you need to add a new super fund, just click on the add button here, put in what the new super fund is. And as a minimum requirement, we need the USI number. That's the fund unique super identifying number. So it's usually like 3 letters, 4 numbers, followed by an AU. So that's sort of the bare minimums there that we require on a new super fund. If it is a self-managed super fund, just tick the self-managed super fund. And we do need the ABN, service address, BSB, bank account details as well for that one there on a self-managed super fund. And then that will show up in the list. And then to select if you've got multiple locations on that particular super fund, you just select whatever the super fund is, click add, and you'll have a list, either all of them if you want it for all the locations, or you can select that with, once this is turned on, you can select who you want. And so that's adding in those super funds. Now for adding in the employees, if we go then to the employee details screen, don't forget there's a little quick launch icon that gets to the employee screen as well. In here, So if you've had an employee, say, that works and just comes back every Christmas, or that's previously been employed by you, under the status, when someone's been terminated, their status will be terminated. So if we select this terminated status, we can see a list of people that have been in the system prior here. And so say Kylie's come back to work for us, we select her name there and we click duplicate. Once someone's been processed and terminated in the system, you can't just reinstate them. You need to duplicate that information into the system. And now that they've been duplicated, we want to edit, and we're going to need to put in either a new username, we will need a password, because that's not automatically in it, and it's removed once someone's terminated in here. Update any of the personal details that you might need to do here. Again, the dates and categories, so you'll just want to update to the new start date of the particular employee on that one. And then also on the pay tab, importantly, if there's been any changes to your bank account details, their tax category, rule set that they may have been on previously, they might be coming back as someone else, hourly rate, all of that sort of stuff. Super fund, so the new super fund will now be in here, but it will have all of the old information of that employee if they're already there. Don't forget, update the department and potentially roles and qualifications on the roles if they've gotten to go somewhere else when you're doing the rostering, so we can now then assign them to be in a new role as well. So once that's done, you can that's one way to bring someone back who's been terminated or employed. If you've got someone new coming on board, yes, you can click add on here and start from scratch, enter all of the information on the personal page, dates and categories. We need a category start date here, fill out all of your pay information. For special options, we strongly recommend allow non-rostered clock on and off to turn that on. What that will allow is if you've got a finger scanner or the ClockOn Go app or the web portal, if they're not rostered on a shift in the roster screen, they will still be able to clock on and off, and then we'll need to save and assign them to a department. So that's one way to add the employees, or you can find an existing employee that is the same of what your new employee is. So, and then we select that particular employee. We can then duplicate that employee, just like we did the terminated status. Now, if you've got multiple locations with multiple ABNs, when you duplicate someone, they'll be the same person, so they only use one license. However, once you start making changes to first and surname in there, that now becomes a new license in the system. So when you do duplicate them, then again, come through, take care to update the personal details. Take lots of care on the pay tab that you do update the tax file number on there and their bank account details. I'd hate for someone to get paid the wrong amount for the wrong work and it all going to the ATO, because that'll be a lot of messing around to resolve that particular issue. So just be cautious of using that duplicate function, but it will quickly bring someone back on board or adding a new employee there. And then finally, once they've been added into the system and duplicated, if you are using a finger scanner there, don't forget to come into setups and then re-enroll or enroll that new duplicated employee. So that's a nice quick way to add someone in there. All right. So that's a quick way to add employees. Like I said, just email support@clockon.com.au if you want a license increase to add your employees in. Now, you are able to add employees before the license increase. So if you need to just get them in there, by all means do that. However, you won't be able to payroll or do timesheet lockdowns until you increase that license. All right, so public holidays. Again, this is done when you set them up in the system under the system setup. Now you need to make sure nothing else is open for the system setup. So if we click on that system setup, and under the calendar section is where we add in all of the public holidays. Now I've just made them blue just to make it a bit obvious where they are in calendar. You can use the colors button if you want and change the color of your calendar and the leave types in the leave calendar if you would like. So we want to go to next year. All of the nationally recognised public holidays will have already been entered into the system with our big sort of mid-year update that we send out. So they should already be in the system. To add a new public holiday, so any state or local public holidays, you'll need to maintain and keep them up to date. So one that often gets missed is Easter Sunday. It's not a national public holiday for every single state. So we just double click on that day, put in the name of the public holiday. Using Select All, we'll select all of your locations and departments and include those. So if you're a business that's got locations in different states or different areas, you may have like a race day holiday or something like that for a rural area, but the rest of the company doesn't get it. You can choose who you want to include in this particular public holiday. So if I didn't want head office to get Easter Sunday, I can uninclude that there. When I click save, it will then add that to the public holiday. So depending on where the employee's default location is, will be depending if they get that public holiday in there. Now for the half-day public holidays, so South Australia, Northern Territory, and potentially in the future Queensland for Christmas Eve, they've got half-day public holidays for Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. Now we don't want to enter those into this system calendar. So unfortunately you're going to have to just remember that on those particular days that there are a part-day public holiday on that. If we enter the system with a public holiday on, say, Christmas Eve, anyone that works any time during Christmas Eve, they'll potentially get that public holiday rate applied to them. So we're going to now set up a special rate that'll apply a part day public holiday penalty for those particular times. So I'll show you how to add that special rate and also within the roster screen, how to apply that as well. So we'll close out of here. Now under the rate schedules, likely to have a number of special or number of rates lists here for the different levels of pay, and these also have our special rates. Now if you don't have any in here, I'd recommend just adding one, just call it default, don't need to do anything else with it in terms of when you add it. But once it's added, double click on the rate list that you want to do, and then we go into special rates, and you can see here I've already added one in, so I'll just copy that, just quickly remove. So to add that in, if we click on the add button, we want to give it the name, so I'll just call it part day public holiday penalty. I don't need to assign it specifically for a role, so that'll mean whatever that person is rostered on that day, it will allocate the costing to that same shift. And then I need to just work out what that rate is. So we're just going to go double time and a half, so 250%. And click save. Now, if you've got multiple rate sets here, you'll need to do that for all of those rate sets that are assigned to people. Once that's been done, if you select that rate set and click on apply, we can then apply that change or that rate set to multiple people. So if you don't have everyone assigned to a rate set, you can come into here, select the rate set that you want them to be assigned to, select using the control button, you can select multiple of them and just apply that to them. And that means that those employees will now have the ability to apply that part day public holiday special rate. All right, and so now we'll go into the rosters screen. Now I'm sort of going to do a couple of things within the rosters. So in processing your payrolls in advance, you need to have the timesheets in the system ready to go and autofill those to get into payroll. So you can process in advance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up and process sort of 2 payrolls in advance as well. So I'm just jumping ahead to the roster period that I'm working with. Now at the moment I have an unpublished roster. So for this to generate timesheets, I need to make sure that I publish the roster. So on the View tab, we go to Publish Shifts. I want to publish all, and now they've all got black borders around them. And when I press Save here, That now generates all of those timesheets. So after we finish updating our roster for that period that we're wanting to process in advance, we'll jump to the timesheets and you'll see all these timesheets in here and we will auto fill them in. So get your roster how you like it. I'm going to then navigate to the next period. Okay, so here we've got a period that's got the public holidays. You can see 25th, 26th of December, we've got the blue lines. Now, for the part day public holidays, on December the 24th, we can see where those kick in. So for those states, it's from 7 o'clock PM, 1900, they will kick in to midnight. So an easy way is by just clicking on the date at the start, coming to the View tab and using Timeline with Zoom, we're able to see those particular shifts that are potentially going to fall into that period. So let's say we've got here, Clemens is working that day. First half up until 7, just paid per normal, but we need to pay that penalty for that last part of the shift. So if we right click on that shift, oops, let me just deselect everything. Right click on that shift under rates. Because we've added that rate and that's assigned to Clemens, it'll now show up here on the predefined. And I want to do part of shift, the part day public holiday. And that'll just throw it into the center of the screen, and I can just click and drag that right to the end of the window. And then if I hover on the edge of that, I can then move that to 7 o'clock, and it moves in little 15-minute increments. So you can see here now it says 1900 on that shift. So that means when I now hover on here, we've got the normal shift, but from 7 till 9 for 2 hours, that's going to be paid at time and a half. So that's one way to add that particular special rate to that time, to that shift. The other way is if we double click, and this is the same as if you're in the timesheet window. To add this in, you open up that timesheet and you go to the rates icon and we click add using custom times, and we can select the special rate, and then just at the start we'll just put the time that we want that special rate to kick in. Click save and close, and that's now added that time for to go as that penalty rate. And now the other one that may occur is that this might be someone's normal shift on that day. So let's look at cash, for instance. They normally do a 1 till 9 o'clock shift. However, on that particular day, we're just needing to pay them. They might have just worked up until that 7 o'clock, but then finished work at 7 o'clock. So we can right click on that shift. On the shift option here, we can split it. And if we double click on this first worked part, we want that to finish at 1900. And then for the second part, if we right click and we go shift change to, we'll make it public holiday leave. So that means that they're just going to be paid just 100%. So not any penalties on that. And then again, we'll just double click on that. We'll just change the start of that part for the public holiday. We don't need a break in this component of it, so I'm just going to remove that break. Also on there, and then finally, when you do a split shift, if you've got the publishing function on, just make sure you right click on that shift and publish it as well. So that way it generates the timesheet. And so in this case, they'll get paid normally till 7 o'clock for working, and then it'll let you know when you're doing your reports on who got paid for not working on the public holiday, because we've set those up as a public holiday leave entry. And so that's sort of 3 ways that handle those part-day public holidays. Now, for the public holidays that we've set up on the calendar in the system, any shift that's sitting on those public holidays, depending on the rule set, they will get, it's as though they're working, so they'll get paid that appropriate penalty. So let's say you're open Yeah, say you're not open on either of these days and they all need to be public holidays, just paid for not working, they're their normal shifts. First we want to do is just remove out any of the casuals that might have been rostered in this template. And so up in the employment filter, I will leave the casual filter turned on and untick all the others. And then I'll just, using the control button and clicking on the dates up the top, it will select all of the casual shifts. I can delete those because they're not going to be paid for not working on the public holiday. Bring everybody back in. And again, holding my finger on the control button, I can select, select both of these days and just right click on one of the highlighted shifts, shift change that to public holiday. And now they will all get paid for not working on that particular public holiday. We can then save that. And let's navigate to the future. So again, we've got New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. So if we need to, we can click on that particular day. Timeline with Zoom, we'll zoom in and we can see the ones that we do need to extend there on that if we need to for the part days. The same thing works if someone works a half day on a public holiday and you want them, they need to be paid part of that shift just as non-working, but need to be paid part as the public holiday. Again, you just right click on that using the shift function, split the shift, make the appropriate adjustments that you need to on that. I like to use timeline with Zoom when I'm doing these sorts of split shifts because I can see them both. Make the part that you want to be public holiday. And then also don't forget to publish that as well so it shows up correctly on the timesheets. All right, so that's adding in those public holidays and creating those part day shifts for those couple of states who have those half days. All right, so the other thing is when you're, I guess, rostering for this time of year is there's going to be lots of people who are on leave as well. So to do that, let's navigate to the next period here. So once the leave is being entered into the system, either be it from someone with using the app doing the leave requests and you've applied them, they'll be already in the calendar. If not, you can navigate to that period. I'm going to change my view back to employee view. I can then find the employee that I want, right click, shift. Oops, I just want to add leave and the type of leave that they get. Make sure the start and end times are correct, and I'm just going to then copy and paste, or you can just click and Control V. So we're just adding those leaves in the future. So you can pre-add those as far into the future as you want. You'll notice on these ones here, we've got red calendars. If I hover there, they just don't have enough leave available for those particular shifts. And that will flag when you're doing the timesheets that they don't have enough leave. You could choose to change these to unpaid or let them go into negative. It's up to you and depending on how your business handles that. So once you've now got leave in the system, I'll just come back into role view. If you were to then load a template onto that period, so I'll go Shopfront Busy and open that template, you'll notice that we'll get a number of overlapping shifts everywhere along here. And so that's because the template's then already been loaded on leave entries that are already there. So a quick way to get to those overlapping shifts is if we go to the View tab here and under the Shift filter, we want to have a look at the days that have the leave, but we only want to look at the shifts that are on those. So using the shifts on leave days only, it now shows all of those shifts there that are on the same days where people have leave. And then at this point, clicking up here will allow you to select all of those shifts. And it depends again on how you handle it. If you're needing someone to cover all of those shifts, just right click on one of them, go to shift and unassign all of those. And so now you'll be ready to get assigned people on that one. Or you could just delete them all if you don't need those shifts covered. But if we needed those shifts covered, we've now unassigned all of those. I'll change that shift filter back. And you'll now know all of those overlapping marks have now changed. And we've got a whole heap of unassigned shifts that we now need to find people to fill. And so we can go through there, obviously just selecting on a particular shift, using our filter by role, shows who's available for that shift, and then show available between anyone who's not already rostered on a shift. So we're now left with the people who can handle that particular shift, and we can assign those. So you're doing those filtering in applying all of those rosters in there. Again, once you're happy with everything, we want to publish all of those shifts. And now that they're published, we want to save. And that there is generating all of the timesheets that we need for that period. So we've got here, and we've pre-readied all of our timesheets for the period that we're going to pay in advance from the 16th to the 12th of the 1st in the system. All right, so once you've done all of that within your rosters, we can close out of our roster. We can then come to our timesheets. Now, I guess that the process with processing payrolls in advance is that you want to have all of your shifts pre-entered into the system, and they need to have the start and end times for everything. So when you roster everything and publish it, you get, essentially you're looking at what you're looking at here. And we want to add in start and end times for everybody. So even though they would typically clock during this time, we're just getting it done in advance for them. So I'm going to change the view to all employed. And so this is going to show all of the timesheets for the up and coming payroll. Select the actual date range that you're wanting to do the pay in advance for. So we'll go. And so that will now add all of the timesheets in here for that whole period. And so I want to select all of those. I want to also autofill. Just takes a moment. Right, so they're now all entered in there. What we also want to do now, and this is a step that's optional, you don't need to do this, but with them still all selected, if you click edit, we can put a general note on this one. So we can put paid in advance. And using the apply all, it's going to add that general note to all of those timesheets. So we can do apply all. And so that way, once you've processed the pays and that period's gone, you can still get your staff to be clocking on and off. And then when you look at the timesheets for when you get back, you will be able to see they'll all be non-rostered timesheets because no one will have have any rostered shifts because they've already been processed. So they'll all show as none shifts. But when you run the timesheet reports, you'll be able to determine which were the ones paid in advance and which are the ones that were done afterwards. And then at that point, you can choose what sort of adjustments that you need to do in there. Sorry, so I said I'll probably forget links. Just taking a step back on the public holidays here, I've just added a couple of links there to find the Australian public holidays and how to add public holidays in the rosters as well. So I just thought I'd quickly add those. So yeah, if we pick now just any old shift, you'll see that we've got that general note in there. And then finally, once we do that, we just want to look at the errors and warnings to see if we've missed anything for that period. And so we've got a couple of errors and warnings in here. These purple ones more than likely will be their leave balances. And so at that point, if you needed to make them as, say, unpaid leave, we can double click on that shift, change the category that we need to. Just for time's sake, I'm just going to select these ones and approve, which is just overriding that warning. And then we've got a couple in here that don't reach minimum hours that I've got just for ease of purpose. Well, to pay more on that one, I guess, we can come in here and edit that. And let's make that 11:30. And I'm just going to clear and autofill on that one to quickly fix up those time entries and apply all. All right, so we've now got all valid timesheets and we're ready to go into payroll and process them in advance. Now, before I do that, I'm going to show you how to apply, say, a bonus to a group of people for Christmas. So we all love getting Christmas bonuses. And if you do that, you can either do that on an individual basis or assign that to a group of people quite quickly. So we'll jump out of timesheets here. And again, under setup, we'll come into the allowances and deduction section, and these are all of the templates. And so what I'm wanting to do is apply, say, a bonus to a group of employees that get a particular template in here. And so I want to apply to, say, all of the pharmacists in this particular case. So I'll double click on this allowance template. And so now we've got what they've currently got in there set up for them, and I need to add in a new one. So clicking on add, and I can call it whatever you want to call it to show up, end of year bonus on that. And I'll just add a link on how to add bonuses too, if you want to look back on that one. And we now leave the type as a normal allowance. The fixed amount, by leaving it as a 0 amount, it means it won't automatically show up in the payroll. So that will still give you the ability to make it individualized once you're in payroll, but it'll be there ready to go. You want to select the pay period that you normally work with, so per week or per fortnight. Where do you want that to sit in the, I guess, your STP submissions in the end of financial years? Is it a part of their gross wage or is it an allowance? And are you processing this as a before tax sort of bonus, or is it an after tax bonus as well? So bonuses, which additional money, though, will be the allowances on that. And then finally, again, we just need to choose, is this included in part of their super earnings or not on here? So we can enable that or not. This bonus payment one, it doesn't report it. There's a particular report in the system which will just show up those bonus payments. So it's up to you if you tick that. It's not necessarily required to do that. All right. And so once that's been added in, we can click save, and then we want to apply that to the group of people. So single click, make sure it's highlighted, click on the apply button, and this now opens up a list of all the individuals who have the different allowances and deductions assigned to them. So clicking on the current allowance set, it will group all of those allowances to them. And so I'm now going to highlight all of the pharmacists and run apply. And that's then going to apply that addition to that template. Now you'll notice some people have modified ticks, so it's not going to make any changes to anything individual that they've got set up for them, but it's going to apply that bonus now to all of those people. So if we just pick an employee here, I'm now looking at the individual copy here of that. So we're looking at Alan's here. So we've got the end of year bonus that's been applied by the template. If we scroll down, we've got a co-contribution in here that's a modified version. So that's where that modified tick's coming from. Now in here, I've just applied to the group of people, but if you wanted to add that bonus to someone else while we're here, you can just double click and choose that particular person. Double click on it and just apply it to that individual allowance. So rather than going to the employee details, pay tab, finding every individual person from the drop down, using this apply function within the allowances and deductions template manager, you can quickly get in there and apply and add any allowances or deductions. So now that that's been added in there, we can now enter into payroll to process that leave in advance, or process, sorry, those payrolls in advance. So under payroll here, we'll jump into payroll. Now there's a new function that's recently just come out within ClockOn where, and you probably anyone doing payrolls already seen it, but when you process payroll, you need to choose the payment date that you're going to be processing that on. So that's something we need to be very careful of when we're processing these payrolls. All right, so I have now Kylie, sorry, who we brought back from being terminated previously. It's got the old start and end date. So clicking on edit period, we can then change that to match up with the one that we're wanting to process, the 16th, 12th. So by doing that, it will then move Kylie, sorry, into this group of everyone that I'm wanting to process in advance. Now, if I didn't want to process all of these in advance, I can use include all employees and just select who I want to process in advance. So you don't have to do everyone to be able to do that as well. In this case, I'll just throw everybody in here. We click next and it'll ask for that payment date. So I want to make sure that I'm doing the correct payment date that I'll be doing this for. Now, just because we're processing this in advance, we can submit the STP in advance. You can upload the ABA files to your bank in advance and maybe then trigger them to do the submission or the disbursement of that money on those dates that you're saying that these payment dates are. So yeah, that'll be done within your bank on putting some sort of schedule on the disbursements themselves. Otherwise, you can run your ABA files, sort of take them with you if you're going away and just do that upload on the day that you need to do that submission to the bank. This payment date will help with those particular files. Also, just a side note on the payment date is that when you're running your reports, it's now, when you select your date range for your reports, it's looking at the payment date, not the end of the pay period. So if you're finding you're running reports and you're like, oh, it's missing that last payroll, just extend the end date of the period that you're selecting there, just to potentially include what the payment date might be. And then that will make sure that you view that payroll within those, in those reports. So we'll click save. This now enters into payroll. And now we can go through and process those payrolls. So if there's any things that you needed to check, by all means, you can go through and check those in there. If we have a quick look here at Alan, we've got that end of year bonus that we already added in there. So we can come in, add whatever that amount is in the system. The other thing is, if you did miss someone on adding that allowance in earlier, you can come into the allowances here and add that in afterwards if you need to. And if we come through here, we've got Darren here. So we do have that part day penalty as well. So we've got that 1 hour additional of that part day penalty on that. And I would assume also 24th, we've got potentially something kicking in into overtime here as well. So in this particular case, we've got that time in lieu turned on. So there's triggered overtime, so that penalty's then gone into overtime. What we can do on that particular timesheet if we don't want that to happen, so we go, what's the 24th? Under our rates, in here, we can exclude this from any overtime triggers as well. So if we click save on that and close, we now get the full 2 hours of that public holiday penalty instead of it being at time and a half in time in lieu, because we've excluded it from the overtime calculation on that. For those, sorry, which I did skip ahead before, so I showed you how to add that part-day public holiday on the rosters. To do that on the timesheets, when you get to that timesheet section, you just double click on that particular shift and use the rates button up the top. And that's where we use adding the custom times, and we can make those changes there. And so now we've done all of that. We go next. It's up to you if you want to notify your employees if they're using the ClockOn Go app. This will let them know that you've done a payroll in advance for them. If you don't want to let them know, just turn that off and we will process that payroll. And then you just do that again for the next payroll as well. And that's process those 2 payrolls in advance, or whatever number of payrolls that you needed to run in advance. There we go. And in here, you can get your ABA file, submit STP. It will be here as well in the advanced section. I don't have that enabled on this particular training database, that's all. Print any reports that you need to. Click finish on that. And so once you then process those payrolls, you're quite welcome to, go away, enjoy your holidays. If your staff are still working during that period with those particular shifts and they're continuing to clock that information, when you come back, if I just change this start date, you'll see these grayed out ones. So they're the ones that have been processed. However, as your staff start clocking their times, what you'll see, and I'll change this. So what you'll start seeing is these none shifts on those times. And from here, you'll be able to then run a timesheet report for that period of when you went away, and you'll be able to see the differences there between what shifts that they've actually worked and what particular shifts that you need to change. So and then it's just a matter of making those adjustments in those future payrolls to get them caught up to speed. So last week's webinar was on the pay adjustments. So I've just added another link there, and that will give you some pointers on how to do that adjustment on the payrolls. So probably the report that will be useful is if we come into reports, and again, we'll go into the timesheet reports here. So there is a timesheets employees with general notes, and you might want to go one per page on that particular one. And so if we double click on that, we want to select the date range of that report that we're looking at. Oops, sorry. Custom date range, and so we'll do the 60. And so we'll just do and we'll run that timesheet report. And because we added all of those general notes in there, you can see which are all of the shifts that have been paid in advance. And if I come through to Floyd, you'll then be able to see these none shifts in here. So I'll expand that out. So you'll be able to see those none shifts, and you'll be able to see that they weren't rostered, but the 2 hours were the same. So you don't need to worry about any back pay there. So you'll be able to then work out which are the ones that need to be back paid for various, if it's additional hours, and calculate those dollar amounts. Once you've then organized and worked out all of those adjustments on those particular timesheets, you can either just delete those and get rid of the none timesheets in there, or if you want to keep them in the system for a little bit, just untick the include in pay, and you can select multiple and apply all this particular change. They'll get a line through them, and you'll notice it's sort of a dark maroon. So that means they're a valid timesheet, but they're in the past. So that will then keep that information there for you if you want to review back to that. Just be aware that if you are doing that, pay not to include in pay, when you do next time come into timesheets, it will group all of those just at the top because they're timesheets in the past that haven't been processed yet. So if we go select forward, oops, I need to go further forward than that. You'll see those timesheets in there with that. So that's how you can then make those changes of those payrolls in advance. I guess finally is if you're going away over that period, don't forget if you're self-hosting to back up your data. And I forgot to grab that particular link, and I'll add that one in a second. But you want to make sure you back up the data folder for ClockOn. I'll quickly show you that. So you just would right-click on your icon, and if you go open file location, for those people who aren't using our hosted servers, and you would have your data folder, whatever that is, and you want to back up that data folder. So if you're self-hosted, you want to make sure that is included in your backup. Also, if you need further access to get to ClockOn, if you are using our hosted data, you can get an icon, which I've just added a link there as well. You can install an icon on a laptop, so when you're away, you can access that. And the other options would be, talk to your IT provider. If you're self-hosted there, they might need to set up either a VPN connection so you can connect into that information, or some sort of a remote desktop connection. And there's also a number of remote control applications out there that you can use to, say, set up on your work computer and gain access. So have a look at which ones is useful for you. Unfortunately, I can't sort of recommend any particular remote control softwares, but yeah, have a look out there. They will be able to, they might suit you to be able to then remote control into your machine that's got ClockOn installed to be able to do that. If you do need help getting an icon installed and you've got our cloud hosting, by all means, just send an email through to support@clockon.com.au. We can help you get that icon installed for you. Or if you are self-hosted and you are wanting to move to our hosted platform that has daily backups and automatic updates and all of that, that would be perfectly fine as well. Thank you for the question here. If we've got an employee that called in sick but has already been paid normal hours, how do you change that later so the entitlements are updated? So for that one, again, if you check out that pay adjustments webinar, there's that exact example, except it was between personal leave and annual leave doing the adjustment. But what you can do on that one is essentially you would probably the easiest way to do that is if you come into the employee details, work out what those hours are, and then under the leave tab you can just adjust the leave balance in there to do that. As well, if you want to put that timesheet into the system, you can add a timesheet in the past, so the date where that personal leave is, and it will be processed in the future payroll. And when you're then in that future payroll, you would add a deduction allowance in there, so a deduction, and deduct the dollar amount of what that personal leave is for that up and coming payroll, because the dollar amount's already been paid. So essentially you would come into the timesheets, you would add in your timesheet for whatever that date was in the past in there. You would make it a leave entry for your personal leave, 9 o'clock till 5 o'clock. Your break, something like that as your general note. Oh, I created 12 records. Only wanted the one, sorry. And so here you'll see now that's a dark maroon color. It's because the pay period's for the 30th of the 12th to the 12th of the 1st, whereas this one's in the past. So when we then enter into this payroll, this timesheet will show up. It will take out of the personal leave balance. And for that particular person, whatever that dollar value is, you would just deduct that in that payroll, and that would balance out those figures and automatically update the leave balance as well for that time. So that's how you would make a change to that one in advance. Fantastic. Look, we've sort of gotten through everything, so I will just allow you to unmute yourself if you've got any questions. So by all means, chime up and let us know. I've just added a link for everyone with a feedback form. So if you've got the time to go in there and fill it out, I'd greatly appreciate it. It lets me know what was useful in this. Also gives you the opportunity to say, hey, I'd really love to see this sort of information done in the future as well. So please, if you've got the time, it only takes 2 minutes to fill out. That would be greatly appreciated. Like I said, this is recorded. So once we get this uploaded to our blog, we'll send an email out and everybody will be able to then view it at their own leisure. If anyone missed anything coming in late, that will also be there ready to go. So at the moment, doesn't look like there's any other questions. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope that was helpful to get you up and running for the holiday period, help you with public holidays and those part-day public holidays, which I know are a little bit not as simple as straightforward as the typical public holidays in ClockOn. But yeah, so thank you again for joining me. Have a great day and enjoy the holidays. There should be one more webinar just before I go on leave. It'll likely, if I can get it together, be around the 17th or 18th of December. So please keep an eye open for that. Again, fill out that feedback form. Let me know what you would like covered in that. Thank you and have a great day.